We're live?
You right.
Oh my gosh. All right, so welcome to the PC and Mac imaging STR class. This is our first of the year. We're trying this streaming thing out. I know there's about a dozen of you out there that are watching this, so if it's awful, let us know. Sound, video, that sort of thing. The chat window should be open over on the side. I've got John Protzman here. He's going to be kind of handling the chat. Sam Garza is going to be dealing with the video and all that other stuff. Um, we'll see how it works. Hopefully it's great. If it's awful, then we'll improve it. We have a couple of people that are actually in the room, so that's kind of cool too. We wanted to see how the both pieces of that work. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Nigel Jordan. John Protzman and I, we make up the SWAT team. The SWAT team is just I don't know, what do we do? A little bit of everything, I suppose. If you don't know us, you probably will at some point. But we work with your site techs. We work, with the schools team, the admin team, all of the teams really. I've been with DPS for 11 years. John's been here for 5 years. But enough about us. We're going to kind of dive into this. I like to run through these pretty quickly because all of this stuff is documented. So the truth is that a lot of this stuff, it's good to see it and see how it works, but really the documentation is nice to have when you actually go through it on your own. But we are going to have time for questions. If you have questions kind of while we're going through this, like I said, John's going to be fielding those for you guys that are out there. But if we have bigger questions, and especially for you two in the room, if we'll kind of we'll have question periods to kind of go over the stuff that we've gone through. We combine both the advanced and the basic imaging classes into one because we can kind of cover all of it now in a couple of hours. We're going through both PC and Mac, so it should be good. We're crossing our fingers that this works out. So without further ado, we're going to kind of we're going to start with the Mac imaging. We're going to show you two different methods of imaging Macs. We're going to use FileWave Lightning and we're going to use Deploy Studio Server. We're going to show you how to deploy images and then show you how to capture your own. So yeah, let's dive into that. Are you up on there? Cool. All right, so the first thing that we're going to show you is FileWave Lightning. So FileWave Lightning is really good for very quick deployment because it's done over Thunderbolt, or I guess if you have older machines, you can do it over FireWire. But because it's local like that, you can have images deployed in 5-6 minutes. It's really fast. It's good for individual machines. I'd say once you get past 5 or 6 machines, maybe even on up to 10, it might be at that point where you want to look at Deploy Studio Server. Deploy Studio Server is a slower solution, but you can kind of queue up a lot of them at once. And once you've done so, you can kind of just set them, forget them. If any of them fail, you can come back and do those individually. That'd be a good spot for cleaning up with FileWave Lightning. So if you've already gone through the process of capturing an image, and this one's going to seem a little bit backwards because of how FileWave works, but we're going to do capture and then, or I'm sorry, we're going to do deploy images and then capture in that order for all three of these. So we'll start with what it takes to deploy an image. And I'll show you how to get these in here later, but you can see that we have an image, 1011.6 here. So the first thing that you have to do, and those of you out there, you won't see this, but the first thing you need to do is you have to have a machine that has FileWave Lightning installed on it. It can be any Mac with the same port as the Macs that you're imaging. So most modern Macs are obviously going to have Thunderbolt ports, but you install FileWave on here. We have directions on this that show you the link. I usually just go grab whatever the latest version is on there. It downloads in a minute. It installs really quickly. You just drag it to your applications folder. And then if you have images already, you actually just drag those images into FileWave Lightning. It copies them to a specific location, and then you're ready to start deploying. So the first thing that you need to do to deploy to a machine is you turn that machine on, and those of you that are out there that can't see me booting this up, I'm holding down the T key on the machine that I'm booting. That boots the computer into target mode. I guess if you want to show them what it looks like here, can you switch it to this camera, or?
That camera's on.
Oh, that camera's on. So once you've booted it up with holding down the T key, it will show you this image here. It means that it's ready to be a targeted drive, and you guys out there, you can see that. From that point, and you can switch back over there, you're going to plug in your Thunderbolt cable just into the side of that device. Um, and what you should see, if you have your computer set up to do so, is you'll see your drive show up on the desktop here. Now, if you don't have, and by default, I don't believe the newer versions of Mac OS actually do this. So if you need to set that up, you click anywhere on your desktop, you go into your Finder, you go into Preferences, and you make sure that you have a checkbox here on the hard disks, external disk, connected servers. This will show you all of the different things on the desktop. Obviously, external disk is what I just plugged in. So once this appears here, then we're ready to start deploying to it. So again, we have our image sitting in FileWave Lightning. We're going to click the deploy button. You can see that it already recognizes this is this is the drive that I can restore it to. Every once in a while, this drive gets detected as an internal volume. That's why I showed you the preferences here, just in case it doesn't show up, to just check all of those. If that happens, put a check in the box that says show internal volumes. Obviously, it's not checked by default because it doesn't want you to try to restore to the hard drive that you're restoring from. Actually, I don't think it'll let you. But so you're going to just choose your drive here. You're going to hit the restore key, and again, I'm not going to actually restore to all of these because it does take a while. Honestly, this one goes pretty quickly. Like I said, in FileWave, it's just 5 or 6 minutes. But that's it. You hit restore. It goes through the restore process. It doesn't actually give you any notification when it's done. It just kind of kicks you back out of here, and you'll actually see your drive disappear. That's because it's no longer mounted as a drive that you can restore to. Then you just shut your machine off and start it back up, and it's ready to go. So we'll pause for a quick second to see if you guys have any questions about restoring an image to a drive using FileWave Lightning. None in the room. Anybody out there in the field before we move on here? All right. Moving on then. What's that?
They have a delay.
Oh, they do have a little bit of a delay. Okay, we'll give them just a moment here then.
Commercials in the chat.
They're just good.
Oh, there's the puppies. Oh, I love those puppies. That's great.
See? Perfect.
Vermeen says yes.
Ask away.
What are you guys using for the streaming?
Just
OBS.
What's it called?
OBS. It's open source.
What if
Free?
the only
Yeah.
Mac in the building
Nice.
is the one needing imaging?
And then I just
Okay.
ping names to do something.
Yeah.
No question?
do you want me to,
Couple in chat.
since they're a little bit behind, do you want me to just
Is this
respond to
image
them? Or?
something I could put on an airport server and deploy?
So why don't you go ahead and just read them out loud to me, go through them one by one, and I'll just start going through answering them, because then it'll catch up and we'll move on from
Okay,
there.
so Teresa Allen says, is this documented on the STR wiki?
Okay, yes, this is, FileWave's been around for a while, so this is all documented on the STR wiki. We're obviously going to be moving, I'm sure you guys saw the announcement, we're going to be moving everything from the STR wiki to the HPK format sometime coming soon. But yes, this is all documented. If for some reason you can't find it or the document looks out of date, let us know. We can obviously supply you the documents here. Everything that we're doing today is documented. And I would say if it's not on the STR wiki, let us know and we can make sure it is. Next question.
Okay, what if the only Mac in the building is the one needing imaged?
The only Mac in the building is the one that needs imaging. I'll show you deploy Studio Server. I think that's probably the method you're going to want to go, because you won't have another one to deploy from.
Okay, Philip says, is this image something I could put on an airport server and deploy from there?
Is this something that you can put on an airport server and deploy from there? Supposedly there's functionality to do remote deployment for this software, but I've never actually done it before. It's something we could explore, but honestly, if you're going to do over the network deployment, I would recommend just doing Deploy Studio Server. Right now it's a little bit slow, but once we have our new hardware and our new line to it, it'll be a lot faster. I think I've seen them go as quickly as maybe 15 minutes or so The most recent ones that I did were pretty quick. So
Yep.
we have a network solution for this, but for this specific piece of software, we don't. The free version doesn't really have very many features. It's for really quick images. Anything else?
There's kind of an obscure one that says Philip goes on to say, I have a 2 terabyte airport and would like to use it for more than just time machine backups for my admin.
So along the same lines, like I said, it's something that you could try exploring with this software. It's really not very feature rich. The free version of this doesn't really have too much to it. This company has a variety of different pieces of software in this big software suite of things that they can do. So there might be something that they offer that costs money, but Lightning is really just made for really quick, Thunderbolt imaging, just super fast, super easy. Any other questions on there? Okay. What's that? Nothing else? Okay, so I don't see any other questions on there, so we're going to move on to image capturing. Image capturing is actually pretty much the same story here. The truth is that the first thing you're going to do for creating any of these images is you're going to set up a computer how you want it to be set up, right? So in the Mac space, you're going to get, say, and the best way to capture images, we're actually going to do this for our 1112 or our 1012 image coming up soon. We just basically get a new computer in the door. It's already set up with 1012 on it. We just start installing the software from scratch. So we'll hand install Office 2016. If there's certain wallpapers or different things that we want. I mean, there's a variety of different customizations that you can do to it, but you basically just get one Mac set up exactly how you want it to be. Build the user accounts that you want. Put a student account on there, a teacher account on there, Promethean software if you've got that in your building. All of that stuff. You build the machine exactly how you want it, and then you turn it off. You turn it on holding down the T for target again, and you actually get to this exact same spot that we were before. We focused up there. So you'll get to the same spot before. Hopefully it pops up again here. I don't think I have to. There it goes. So the only difference here is what we're going to do in FileWave. So specifically, once we've built our image exactly how we want it to be, we boot it up in target mode again. You see it pop up in here. So we have a couple of, so before what we did is we actually just, oh, I'm sorry, we're at the create. Okay, so we're going to create the image. So we click on the create button and you can see that it says drop your installation media here, an app or whatever else you want. The truth is, or no, are we in the right one here? Is it import? I'm sorry. No, it's just create, right? Drop your installation media here. I thought that was from, hold on a second here, I'm sorry. I thought, oh, they took that out in that version. It's new image, right? Okay. They used to have a button down here for this. So, my bad. You actually go up to File, New Image. No, it's doing the same thing. I thought that had. Oh, right. You have to. Don't you have to grab the image set from? Right. You have to make the DMG for it first, right?
Yeah.
My bad. Okay. Sorry, I haven't done this in a while. So we're actually going to go into disk utility. Oops, disk utility. Thank you. Okay. So again, the first step was we booted up into target mode. We wait till it shows up there, and then you can see that the drive is going to show up here. So we have a couple of options here. Where is that at? New image from, what is this? Images, scan image first. Where is that? Is that where they did this? I thought it was under new image from Mac HD. Okay, that is where it's from. Can't do it from here, right? Because if you do that from untitled. Okay, so we're going to select the disk, and we're going to go into File, New Image, and we're going to build an image from Macintosh HD. That's what this one's called. Obviously, if this were named something different, it would show up in here differently. So we're going to choose a location to save this. I'm just going to throw it on the desktop here. And it's going to start creating this image. Again, I'm not going to let it go all the way through this process. I'll actually stop it here in a moment. But what you get at the very end of this is you actually get a little DMG file. That's why it's not doing it. Okay. So you'll actually get a little DMG file when it's finished. And depending on how big your image is, I think ours are running between 20 and 30 gigabytes for just our standard setup. So we install Office, we install Adobe Reader, we install Firefox, Chrome. Trying to think of what else. There's not too much on there, but the image ends up pretty big. Obviously, those of you out there that may have like Creative Cloud or some of the other really big suites, they may end up with really, really big images. But when it's finished, you end up with this DMG file. And literally the only thing you have to do when this DMG file is finished is drag and drop it into FileWave Lightning. It'll do a copy process. Depending on the size of the file, the copy process takes anywhere from, I've seen it take like 10, 15 minutes on up to really big images. You know, they can take half an hour or more. It really just depends on the size of your image. Once it's in there, your deployment process is the exact same as we were going through here. You just open your image, you hit deploy, and then show your volumes, restore to it, and that's it. Pretty straightforward. Again, this is all documented in the FileWave Lightning documentation that we have, and that is on the STR wiki. Any questions on that piece? That's the capture image bit. We'll wait for those guys to catch up in a moment. Well, we'll leave that open for a second. Oh, where's the dog part again? Wow. Okay, looks good. All right, so we're going to move on. So we're going to go to Deploy Studio next. So I'm actually going to shut this machine down. Don't need that turned on anymore. Go. So let me look at that. You may have to update that because that's changed.
Okay.
All right, are we all the way out of here? Okay, cool. All right, which corner am I in? Okay, so for those of you out there, I am holding down the Option key as I boot my Mac. It is plugged in. You want to hold it up there? There you go. So it is plugged into the network right now. You cannot, currently with the way our wireless networks are set up, you can't find Deploy Studio Server by connecting to a network on boot. I'm not sure exactly what the technical reason behind that is, but you do need to be plugged in somehow. So those of you out there with MacBook Airs, if you expect to be getting a lot more of those in your school, I would recommend getting one of the little Mac USB to Ethernet dongle adapters or whatever. Kind of sucks because they're like 30 bucks, but it is what it is. So Deploy Studio Server, like I said, I hold down Option. You'll get a few different pieces in here. You can actually hold down N to just look for the netboot set and boot directly to it. I like doing Option because I like making sure that I'm actually booting to it, and I can see it here. Plus it gives you a stopping point if it takes a couple of extra seconds for Deploy Studio to be recognized by your machine. Your mouse is active in here. You can use your arrow keys, whatever you want. But you should see Deploy Studio Server 16, 17 in here. If you have a recovery partition on your drive, you'll also get that there. So we're just going to double click on Deploy Studio. It takes a moment here. It does, you know, like I said, I think those of you that may have stopped by the imaging and setup booth during the STR kickoff at the beginning of the year, our Deploy Studio server right now is sitting on a Mac Mini in our server room, so it is not the fastest machine on the planet. It does have a pretty good connection because it's in, you know, it's down at 780 right now. We intend to upgrade that hardware. The plan moving forward is that we're going to have a virtual machine for it. Install it on there. It'll end up with an even faster connection to it. It'll be on better hardware with faster drives and everything. Like I said before, I've seen these things go maybe 15 to 20 minutes for an image. Obviously, the more people that are using it at once, or the more connections you have going out to your school, it goes a little more slowly than that. If you're doing a whole lab, it'll take significantly longer than that. Deploy Studio, you would really want to use this, in my opinion, in those cases like we had the question earlier. I only have one Mac in my school, or maybe only a couple, and I don't really want to go through the FileWave Lightning stuff. That's when I would use Deploy Studio Server. Or on the opposite end of that spectrum, I really want to do 30 of these at once, and I don't want to sit there and go around to each machine with my laptop and do these 5 minutes at a time. I'd like to turn these on and just do it at once. The best time to do that is at the end of the day. You know, walk into your lab, get these all set up, get them running, and then go home and come in the morning and see if any failed. Because sometimes they do, you know, it happens with imaging. And any that failed, that's where I would use FileWave Lightning to kind of pick up those that may have, you know, not gone as well. When we boot into Deploy Studio, you get to this screen here. I don't know that we're always going to leave a login for this. I think the reason that we have it on there is just so people can't accidentally boot to it and accidentally image your machines. But honestly, the people that are going in here generally know what they're doing. So there may be a point when we take this away. Right now, those of you that have used it in the past, the login name is strrun, and the password is runstrrun. I don't know who set that up. I think they thought they were very funny. Probably Mark Theo, for those of you that know him. Anyway, so we have two tasks in here. We have capture image and restore image. There is going to be a point where we're actually testing a couple things that'll give you more options in here than that. We're trying to set up a multi-boot partition, so those of you out there that might have both Mac and Windows partition needs, we're going to try to set up a task that'll be able to create both of those on the fly. We've had some success with it, but it's kind of tricky at the moment still. The first thing we're going to do, though, here is we're just going to restore an image. So we choose Restore Image. We push the little play button up here. And when we come to this screen, there will be a number of images that are down here. I'm not sure what this one is. I'll have to find out. And we'll kind of cover this when we do the capture task. My guess is that somebody captured an image, didn't name it very well, and now we really don't know what that image is. But you can see that we have an 11.6 image. We've got a couple of older images. These were actually added here for people that have older machines. It looks like Lowry has an image up here. So if Lowry, you're out in the field, good job. You've got an image up there you can use. For right now, the 10.11.6 is going to be the current one. We'll build a 10.12 one and we'll put it up here when it's ready. But all you do in this section is you choose the image that you want to restore to this machine. You tell it where you want it to restore. Usually it's safe to just say first disk available. Obviously, if you have multiple drives in there and you wanted to target the specific drive in that machine, you would do that. I don't know many of you out there that have multiple drives and machines, but it may happen. You choose first disk available. You don't need to worry about the multicast stuff here. If you wanted to rename it to something else, like name the drive instead of, because I think it's just Macintosh hard drive or whatever the default is. If you wanted to name it something specific, you could do so here. But that's really it. You don't have any other options here. I'm not going to do so, but I would just hit the play button here. Once you hit the play button, it starts restoring to the drive. Like I said, could take 15, could take a half an hour, depends on the load on the machine. Once it's done, it gives you notification that it's finished. I do not believe we have it set to auto reboot. I can't remember, did we turn that off? So I think when it's finished, it leaves you at that screen so you know if there were any errors or anything that failed on it. But that's it. The machine will be imaged. You will reboot it. Once you turn it on, it'll kind of go through that initial setup. You may see some additional scripts at the very beginning. If you get like a black screen and there's text running across it, don't worry, that's normal. But that's it. The machine will be imaged after that. Any questions? That's restoring an image. I'll give the thing some time to catch up there. Good. No questions? Oh, there we go. Now we're at the questions. Type a question on the chat. Okay. I feel like that's sufficient time for you guys to type a question. We're going to go to capture. The capture process is pretty much the same. You can see that we're back at the capture and restore screen here. So instead, again, the setup is the same. You get a machine, you install the software that you want on it when you're ready. The only difference being that the machine that you've set up is the machine that you're going to capture from, right? So rather than having one plugged in, you set up a machine, you turn it off, you plug in your network cable, you boot it back up holding down your option key, and then you pop into here and you go to capture the image. So we're going to choose capture image. We're going to push play. And the same thing here, so you've got a little bit of information here. You have your Mac Mini server. That's what this machine is actually called. So here's the piece that I was telling you that somebody probably didn't do when they captured the image. This part's kind of important, specifically because if you capture an image, what it does is it takes an image, it takes a snapshot of what your machine is set up as, transfers it to our Deploy Studio server, sitting down there at the old DoTS building, and then it names it that. Before your image is available, we actually have to know it's available. We don't let people just capture as many images as they want and fill up the drive and all that stuff and just make them immediately available. You guys actually have to notify us, hey, I've captured an image, I need it live. This is what it's called. And then we go and we just approve it. It's literally a checkbox in the Deploy Studio server admin console. We check the box and then it's available to be deployed. But if you don't name it anything good, we don't know which image it is. This hasn't been a huge problem in the past, but we do see people forget this step and then they're like, oh, I don't even remember what I called it. And we're like, well, bad news. We have no idea what that image is. The good news is usually, you still have that computer sitting there how you want it set up. So just capture it again. Images that are named this, we usually give them a little bit of time and wait for anybody to call us and say they're looking for their image. But if we don't hear anything in a month or two, we just delete these. So name your images. Keywords, this part's not too important for our uses, but it's good to get in the habit of it. You can see that this one kind of figured out some keywords. It says 10.11.5, that's what's installed on here, Mac OS X. I don't know why I said i386, that's a little weird, but presumably this is part of the serial number. It's tough to say what the auto keywords generated from here. But if you give it keywords and we ever end up in a situation where there's like 50 or 100 images out there, these are keywords that you could search by. So give it keywords if you want to. It's good to be in the habit of. The rest of this I would not mess with. You don't have any options in most of it except this read only. Really, you want it to be compressed though. You can see it even says here, it restores faster, has a smaller footprint on the server. Read only usually means that the image is going to be a little bit more stable, like it's less prone to errors and things when it's capturing and deploying, but it takes up a lot more space. You can't modify it or do anything to it on the server end. So I would prefer if you guys don't do read only. And format, I would just leave it to auto detect. It's really good about knowing exactly what the format of your drive is. You could change it here if you wanted to, but I would just leave it. So the default settings minus the image name and the keywords are all you're after. And as before, you hit the play button, it's done. It starts capturing your image. Capture time is a little bit longer than deploy time because it's actually copying all that data over and doing compression and everything for it. It tries to use your Mac's hardware as much as it possibly can, but it just takes longer. I think a standard image that I capture usually takes about an hour. So, I mean, I guess if you're needing to get that machine back out into the field or whatever, budget that time for it. That is image capturing for Deploy Studio. Any questions on that?
Dale has a question on chat.
It's an odd question. It says, so the images are not from the Mac that is being re-imaged, but one of several images that DoTS keeps on the server.
These images are not from the Mac that is being re-imaged, but from one of several images that DoTS.
I think the answer is yes. Right? It's not taking an image from a Mac that's already there. It's using your server.
Well, Dale, I guess if I understand your question here, let me just explain, I guess, one more time kind of what this is doing. So I have a computer that I've set up how I want it in the Deploy Studio space here for capturing, right? I set up this computer, it's exactly, has all the software and everything installed how I want it to be. I boot into Deploy Studio, I go to the capture process, and our server downtown is reaching out to the computer you set up and capturing an image of it. Then, at that point, you could use that image to restore to the other machines in your building, because it would be set up exactly how you want it set up, right? You installed, your additional software, or you set up the specific user accounts that you want. You've taken, your custom image, given it to us as a captured image, and now you can log into Deploy Studio with your other computers and restore to those other computers. I hope that makes sense. And I hope that answers the question. I don't see any other questions up there. That's good. The Mac process is actually pretty straightforward. Like there aren't really many variables to it. I'm guessing that many of the people here are for the PC stuff because it is new this year. So if there are no other questions out there, we'll move on to the PC imaging piece. We'll have one kind of overall question thing at the very end. So if people have questions on any of the stuff that we've covered, we can talk about that at the very end. So let's move on to PC imaging. I will, might as well just shut that down. Take this, there, that one's not asleep. Okay. So, all right, we're actually booted up here. That's good. Okay, so PC imaging. Those of you guys that are out there that have been doing PC imaging in the past, the way we had it set up before, Tony Dorado, years and years ago, tried to streamline the process for it. He built the STR tool that you guys are all using probably still to this day if you haven't started on Image Assist. The advantage of that was that we could make anyone out there a quick USB tool. You could take that then and plug it into any machine, deploy the images that we had, and it all works pretty well on the STR's end. The disadvantage is that it's a little bit tricky to capture images. There are a lot of steps you kind of had to go through. There are a lot of pitfalls to where the capture process could fail. Until they added the piece where you could actually just kind of click the capture button inside your STR tool, you actually had to do a lot of hand scripting. I understand they changed that at some point, which is good. It made it a little bit easier. But then additionally, image maintenance for us meant that we would, build an image on a computer, and then if we wanted to support it throughout the district, we had to then take that image, mount it as an offline image, and start injecting drivers into it for all of the models we support. And many times we would have driver conflicts. We would have certain drivers that didn't work. Those of you that have seen the video card driver just not show up even after you've applied an image. That's all part of the kind of convoluted process that we had to go through to support all of the different Dell machines out there that we have. So our hand was a little bit forced. The way that we submit our images to Dell was through a program called Image Direct. We would go through the same process. We'd build an image. We'd go through we'd jump through a lot of hoops to kind of make sure that it was a perfect image that we supplied to them. They would verify it, and if it passed, then we were good. They would start putting it on our machines. If it failed, they came back and said, try again, and they kind of told us why a little bit. But it wasn't always perfect. There was a lot of pain in it. Well, they, through their processes, switched to Image Assist, which is a lot easier for getting our images vetted for Dell machines moving forward. It also gave us an opportunity to use their Image Assist utility, which takes the place of the USB drives that we've been building. When I say our hand was kind of forced in this, part of the reason that we're moving forward on this and the reason we're changing from our old drives is that our old drives weren't capable of setting up machines for UEFI. UEFI is a different way of reading the data on a machine. So you have your firmware, right, your BIOS and everything, and the legacy way of doing it is that you kind of have this dumb system on your machine that says, okay, well, I'm just going to, this is what I'm expecting on the drive, and it just kind of, it points to different spots that it knows are supposed to be in those spots. EFI, or UEFI, the universal version of it, has a lot more control over not only the architecture and the firmware, but it also allows for a lot more diversity in the type of formatting on a drive. So instead of it saying, man, I'm really looking for these specific things, it says, well, I'm just going to let you boot and you do whatever you need to do on your end. You need this kind of partition and just go. And those of you that know a little bit more about this, Apple has been using UEFI for years. They've been in this space for, I don't know, almost 10 years. And while the Windows side has been able to support it, they haven't really been doing it. We've been stuck in BIOS land for a really, really long time. Some people started doing hybrids of it. Dell, when we started getting the mouse in the BIOS screen, that was about when Dell started doing kind of both. So the good news is that the new version of doing things that Apple's been doing for a really long time has actually been embedded in Dell machines for a really long time as well. The new image that we have up there will support any of the E-series laptops. So if you have 5500s up there or out in your schools, you can still image an E5500 laptop with the current image. Our cutoff for desktops is the 790, the Optiplex 790. We do have a different image for the 760 and 780, but anything older than the 760, last year, I don't know if you remember or not, but we decided we weren't supporting older than the 760. If you have 755s and 45s, sorry, you're going to have to use the old image from last year and the old tool. So without further ado, we're actually going to kind of dive into this. The first step in this is that we have to, just like your old tool, we boot from your USB drive. On your Dell machines, the easiest way to get that boot menu is with the F12 key. So as it boots up here, push F12 a few times. It's not like Apple, you do actually have to tap it. If you hold it down, you'll get a keyboard error. It thinks the keyboard is stuck with a button. So we push F12, and we get our favorite little boot menu here for all the different devices you can boot from. You can choose the way that we have the drive set up, and I'll show you the drive set up after the fact, because we kind of have to be in Windows for that. But the way that we have the drive set up, you can either boot it from USB storage device up here, or you should sometimes get an EFI option down here under UEFI boot, if you have that turned on your machine, to boot from there as well. But most of you with machines sitting out there in the field right now are only going to be able to boot from USB storage device. So we choose that. Sometimes you get a little screen saying, press any key to boot from drive or whatever. If you get that, push any key. If you don't, then you'll obviously dive into Windows. And then it's going to load the Dell Image Assist environment. Again, I'll show you how to make the drive a little bit later here. But once you have it made, this is the process that you'll go through to create create the images, or apply the images, sorry. This does take a moment to load. So if you have questions about what we've talked about here, I guess you could ask them.
Will this work for Windows 7 still?
Yes.
No? Okay.
So our standard image right now is a 64-bit Windows 7 image. Like I said, it supports all the way back through the E series laptops, and then back to the 790 on the Optiplex. For those of you that are ready to deploy Windows 10, we have a Windows 10 image also. The Windows 10 image drivers only support to the 50 series laptops, so they don't even go back to the 40. So the 50 series and newer, and then on the desktops they support to the 7010 slash 9010 slash all-in-one 9010s, all of those. You can still apply Windows 10 image to older machines. In fact, when we were testing Windows 10 originally, the machine that I tested the Windows 10 beta on was a Latitude E6510. Really old hardware, but it's still installed, and minus having to kind of massage a couple of the Windows 7 drivers in there just to get like, Ethernet and stuff working, it does pick everything up on the laptop pretty well. Windows 10 is pretty good about drivers. So you could install it, you just wouldn't have the official Dell drivers for some of those older machines. I see a question while we're kind of waiting there. I see is there a 32-bit image? There is a 32-bit image. We actually had to build a 32-bit image for the older machines, the 760 and 780. The caveat is that the 32-bit image also requires a 32-bit tool. So we wanted to try to kind of standardize, wanted to standardize everything as best as we possibly could. So we have a 64-bit tool, and we're deploying 64-bit images. If you have a need for 32-bit images, as I said, we did develop a 32-bit image for Windows 7. We will not be developing 32-bit images for Windows 10, however. And like I said, you do have to build a custom tool, a 32-bit tool, to deploy the 32-bit image. Really, though, unless you have machines with under 4 gigabytes of RAM, I would recommend just doing the 64-bit image where possible. I understand that a lot of schools do end up with lower memory in some of their laptops. It might be easier on you if you just upgrade them, but I know getting that money is never fun. Blood from a stone, is that what they call that? Okay, so, but yes, there is a 32-bit image out there. If you have a need for that, I would contact us directly, because there are a couple of tricks to getting that one to work. It's pretty much the same process, but we built the image a little bit differently. So reach out to us directly if you have a need for the 32-bit. What we're going to be doing today, though, is our current 64-bit image. I think I put the Windows 7 image on this drive, so is that good for questions there? Okay. So, this is the Image Assist tool. When you boot into it, you have a few different options here. The first one on the bottom left is Restore. It's got the little clock icon. The second is Capture. It has the little camera icon. The third is System Summary. If you just wanted to see what information about your machine you could see, it's there. And the last one is a File Explorer. It lets you kind of explore the different files on the drives that are attached to your machine or inside it. You will probably never use these last two. They're not terribly useful in here. Capture you could potentially use from this drive, but we're going to show you a better way of doing it, an easier way of doing it in a little bit. And then, so obviously, Restore is what we're doing here. So we're going to click on the clock. And this is all, those of you that have done PC imaging with our tool in the past, you'll see some similarities. It's actually kind of funny that they've set their tool up very similarly to how ours works. But obviously there's a lot more automation. They've put some serious man hours into programming all this stuff, and it works pretty well. So the first thing that it does, and it depends, again, I don't have great hardware up here, but it depends on the speed of your hardware and the speed of your drive. If it's USB 3, obviously, it goes faster than this. But the first thing that it does is it's going to look for all the drives that are in your machine and try to identify what they call disk 0, which is the primary hard drive on your machine. Gone are the days of accidentally imaging your STR tool. That will never happen with this tool, which is good. The other good news about this tool, of course, is like I said before, you will be able to build this tool on your own. You won't have to reach out to us to build this tool for you. We have directions for it. So once it finds your hard drive, you can see that it found this 250 gig hard drive here. It even blinks at you. It says start here with this big flashing green button that says browse. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look for the image. So we're going to click the browse button. You can see that your hard drive is right here. It's usually your C drive. Most of the time it makes your USB drive the U drive. I don't know why it chose U, maybe because of you, but it'll most of the time be the U drive. If you have more than one drive in there or additional USB drives in there, you'll see them show up as different drive letters. But you really just need to go find your WIM, right? So I put our standard one on here. This is the Windows 7 64-bit WIM for this year. We will maintain that, obviously. That's the image that we set up. If it changes, we'll try to notify you guys to update your tools with whatever the new image is. I don't anticipate that we'll be making many changes to the Windows 7 image, though, especially as Windows 10 starts to ship in about a month. So we choose our WIM. We're going to go ahead and say OK. It's going to go and it's going to scan the WIM. So you can see that it kind of populates a lot of stuff here. The first thing it says is that, okay, this is a UEFI system. It's got a 100 megabyte partition there. Windows is going to be the rest of the drive. Doesn't care how big your drive is. It'll just fill up the rest of it. Really, if you set your drive up properly, which we'll talk about later, you're done. You hit the restore button, it images your computer, it pauses at the end for you to reboot, you're finished. So it's a very fast process. Now, there is one additional piece to this that you could go through if your drive isn't set up correctly or you've put things in different spots, and that's adding the driver package. So the way that I mentioned before, where we had to build an image and inject all of the drivers into it, that's the reason our image started creeping up into 13, 14, 15 gigabyte range, was because we had all these drivers that we were supporting all across all of our devices in the district. What Image Assist does differently, and it's kind of a double-edged sword. The good part about what Image Assist does differently is that it makes our images smaller because it doesn't include the drivers in the image. What it instead wants you to do is take your individual driver packages for your specific model and drop them into this specific folder on the drive. If your drivers are in that folder, it'll recognize the model of your computer, it'll find the correct driver file for it, and then once it's done applying your image, it injects all of the drivers from that driver file, and it does them correctly, unlike us just throwing drivers into a directory and hoping that Windows picks them up like we were doing before. This actually injects them properly. Your video card driver will always work. You have weird like touch scanners or something on like 2 of your devices but not the other 30 laptops in your school, it'll pick those up. It's really good about applying all of the correct drivers for the model that you're working on. So I'm going to show you where those are at. You can click on the Add Driver package here. We're going to go browse around again. And you can see on the drive there's this folder called Dell Driver Packs Local. So this is the folder that all of your drivers will go into. And again, I'll show you this when we go to build the drives. If I go click OK on this, you can see that I put in the driver specifically for this model, Win7 Optiplex. If I click on this, it'll tell you the models that it supports. We're sitting on a 9010 Optiplex here. So it tells you, hey, I have 32 and 64-bit drivers for all of these models inside this driver package. Now, again, this step you don't have to do, but if you put your drivers in a different location, you could manually add those drivers here. But again, you don't have to add the driver package. If you put it in that folder and you hit the restore button, you're done. Any questions on applying an image with Image Assist? And I'll wait a while on this because I know that, this is pretty new, but it's really straightforward. You find your WIM, you hit the restore button. That's pretty much it. Oh, did you respond? Good job keeping on that. Okay. Yes, there is a WIM already prepared by DoTS. When we boot back into our Windows side, I will show you the path of where that's at, because we're going to go in there and talk about how to capture your own images and show you how to build your own USB drive and all that stuff. So I'm going to show you where that path is at. Again, all this stuff is documented. I think it's on the STR wiki. If it's not, I definitely have it because I wrote the documentation. If you need it, let me know directly. I can get it to you by email. I have a couple of PDFs for it and everything, but that's if it's not on the STR wiki. Let's see. So where in the NAS is the image? Okay, we just answered that. I'll show you that in a moment. If I don't do the driver package, then the device will be missing the drivers. Yes. So if you don't have the driver package sitting on the drive in that folder, then there will be no drivers installed. Now, this can be useful because that's actually what you need to do to create your own images. But if you're trying to set up a computer, obviously that's inconvenient. You need the driver package there. We'll show you where those driver packages are, and I'll show you the spreadsheet that I built that tells you which driver packages you need for your models. Okay. If there are any other big ones, let me know, but I'm going to move on. Okay, so that's it. I will have restored my image. It goes through its process, it injects the drivers, and then everything from there is the exact same as it was before. You boot your computer up. I should say there is one difference now. Once you've applied this image that we've created, it actually drops you right at the login screen. You don't have to set the date and time or other things that we've had to do in the past. It'll drop you right at the login screen. It'll say administrator on there. DPS admin is the password, like it's always been. Join it to the domain. You know, all the other stuff. I put in this image, I put the LAN desk installer right at the root of the hard drive. So like it's all ready to go. What we're going to cover right now is we're going to talk about how to create your own images, and we're going to talk about how to create the tool. This kind of goes back to what Kathleen was asking about. If you don't inject the drivers, what happens with the image? And the answer is you can apply this image to any of the machines out there in the district, but without the drivers, it's just going to be a fresh install of Windows with nothing attached to it. And that's useful because if you're going to capture an image, you want it to be driver free. You don't want any drivers in that image. And in fact, the Dell utility strips out some of those. It'll tell you to strip out some of those drivers. So I'm going to cancel out of this. I'm going to show you one other step here that I actually just remembered right now. So the other piece to this, I was talking about UEFI earlier. New machines that you're getting, that's all you have to do. A machine that comes from Dell today, a 70 series laptop, even maybe some of your 50 series laptops, brand new desktops, they're all going to come with these images on them. If you re-image any of those new machines, the process we went through, that's it, you're done. You don't have to do anything else. For your old machines though, you do need to take them off of legacy booting and convert them to UEFI booting, because this is a UEFI image. And we have to do that in the BIOS setup, right? So I've used F12 again here. You can boot directly to BIOS by hitting F2 if you want to. I hit F12 so we can show it in the menu here. But we're actually going to go into the BIOS setup screen. We have a couple of quick changes that we have to make. So, and again, this is for old machines that you've got older images on, anything 50 series and older in your laptops and older desktops. The stuff you're getting right now will come set up already. But your older machines are going to be set up, and I've actually set this up already. Under boot sequence here, your older machines are going to look like this. They're going to be set in legacy mode, okay? So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to set them to be UEFI. Now mine's already set up this way, so I'm actually going to take this out of here. What will happen to you when you choose UEFI instead is you may not get a boot sequence. Sometimes it'll auto detect it. It'll be like, oh, I found a UEFI drive here. I found something I can boot into. I'm cool. You switch to UEFI. You hit apply. You hit exit. Well, we'll get to that and say almost. You hit apply, and it'll be set up. If you do not get anything in the boot sequence up here, you have to add your own. It's really easy to do. You say add boot option. It'll find something for you. So if you look in here, it says it's on SATA 0, it's set up as GPT. Like, there's a bunch of information here, but what you know is that it found a file system that's UEFI, and you can call this anything you want. I'll call it Windows. So once I put a name in there, now I have a boot device that's UEFI. That's what I've just set here. The only other thing that you should check, and most of your machines are already going to be set this way, this is why I almost forgot it, but make sure your SATA operation is AHCI. It's been standard in the district for a really long time, so you probably don't have to do this, but it's worth double checking. This part, like I said, on old machines, you will have to do this. And if you apply an image and it boots up and it says no boot device found, it means you forgot this step. And you have a machine that's set up with legacy booting. Pop into BIOS, set it to UEFI, add a boot sequence if you need to, and then make sure your SATA operation is AHCI. I don't actually need to make any changes because I had it set up. But any questions on that while the computer is booting back up?
So just to verify, Kathleen was asking about this sheet that had all the drivers and the associated models. That's on the NAS, right?
Yes, so the Excel spreadsheet that tells you what drivers you need for your models in your school is sitting on the NAS. And we'll show you in a second. But it's sitting there and it tells you, here's your driver folders. These are the exact driver files you need for your machines because they're not labeled perfectly, and we can't change the name of them. It's part of Dell's setup process to know which drivers are which. So I can't change the name. You just have to use the reference sheet. Honestly, we're recommending, 64 gigabyte drive sounds like a lot, but they cost like 15, 20 bucks these days. It might be worth picking one up because then you could literally fit our Windows 7 image, our Windows 10 image, every single driver for every single model for both of those, and have room to capture your own images on a 64-bit drive. It's a lot, but it's also only 20 bucks. It might be worth it so you don't ever have to worry about, do I have the right drivers? Because you don't have to have one driver file in there. You can have all the driver files in there. And the image assist utility will just say, oh, you've got a 9010, cool, need these drivers, and it does it for you. So this image, I actually just applied the image to this machine before we started all this. I have no drivers attached. So this thing is actually set up to capture an image. Again, you'll land here after you image a machine, administrator, DPS admin. I also went ahead and installed the image assist utility on here, but we'll kind of get to that because I'm going to show you how to make the drive first and kind of show you where all this stuff exists on the network. So, DPS NAS 01. Now, you guys won't have to do this extra bit here. So your path is actually going to be DPS NAS 01 / software depot / DPS / images. That's where all of the image stuff was in the past years, so you guys will recognize that path. We left all of the old images where they were for those of you that came back this year and still needed to build images and apply images from before. So all the stuff from previous years is still there. We just made another folder under that, okay? I'm actually going to add dpsk12.org in here because, oh, I don't have a network on here. Darn it. No, I know, but I don't have a driver for it. My mistake. Let me think about that. How no, I can't steal that one, can I? Could I steal, are either of those DPS laptops that I can browse real quick? Could I steal yours?
Yeah.
Let me steal that for just a moment. I appreciate that a lot. I did not think about that. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Okay. You won't be able to see my lovely face for a moment. I don't apologize much. Okay, so you have it set to project screen. Oh, not that. That's not what I'm after. Yeah, let's do duplicate for a moment. That's fine. Okay, so as I mentioned before, your path is DPS NAS 01, Software Depot, DPS, images. And specifically, we built a new folder in here, and I'll show you what you guys will remember. You've got your WIMS folder from last year, you've got USB fix, like all these other things for how we had it set up last year. We built this new folder called Image Assist, and this is where all the other things in here exist. So first of all, those PDFs we were talking about, yes, they're on the STR wiki. Yes, I can send them to you, but also everything that we're covering here is in image deployment and media creation. These two documents are everything we're talking about here today. So we have a few different folders in here. The first one we're going to talk about is this USB tool folder, okay? And this is all documented. We have a utility in here called Rufus. Rufus is really just a utility that, actually, oh yeah, okay, you pulled it out of there. Voice, right? Rufus is just a utility for taking images, like ISO images or IMG files or anything like that, and writing it to a USB in a bootable or non-bootable format. That's all it's for. It's a free utility. You could go download this on your own. I went ahead and put it in here so people could have it. I'll pop this thing open here not super quick because I'm running from the NAS, but we'll see. Check for application. No, we don't need updates right this moment. So the ISO file for building your own drive is right here, Dell Restore ISO 64. I'll steal my drive out of this machine for a moment and put it in here. So all Rufus requires is that you have a device plugged in, which should show up here in just a minute once this machine recognizes it. And then you go and set a few, okay, so there we go. So it found my drive. And the settings that we're going to do, and again, this is all documented, is we're going to choose the default here, the MBR partition for BIOS or UEFI. This gives you the option, well, this gives you two things. First of all, it gives you the option to boot this drive on your old machines and your new machines. The second thing that it gives you is it allows you to format the drive as NTFS. That's important because our images are bigger than 4 gigabytes, and if you try to format it as FAT32, you won't be able to put the image on there because FAT32 has a file size limit of 4 gigabytes. So the defaults here are, I set the defaults in this version of it, so it should be good to go here. But double check them anyway, MBR for both and NTFS. So the second thing that we're going to do is we're going to go find the image. And it's going to take us to the path where this is at, and you can see the Dell Restore ISO 64 is sitting there. We're going to choose that, and we're basically done. I'm not going to do that to my poor drive here because it's actually got some things on it I need. But you hit start, it goes through, there's a progress bar. This part, just creating the tool, takes 30 seconds, maybe a minute. It's pretty fast. The Dell Image Assist utility can actually fit on a gigabyte drive. So if you don't have a 64 gigabyte drive and you just need something to fit the image on and maybe the drivers, you could actually build this on a single gigabyte drive and then have like a little 8 gig drive to put our maybe 16, I don't know how big our image is, but fit the drivers and some of the other stuff on there.
Mention that they can name the drive there and name.
Yeah, you can actually, and that's actually a good point. So you should name this like Image Assist, or I named mine Dell PE64 because I have both 64 and 32 I work with. But naming this drive something that you'll remember, so if you plug it into another machine, you know what it is. Very useful to do. But really, those are the only things: making sure that there's a drive in there, choosing the right formats, naming it, of course, and then finding the image you want to apply. That's it for making the drive.
So is that to make the image?
That's to make the Image Assist utility that we were just booted into on a
Okay.
USB drive.
All right.
We'll do the actual capturing of the image in just a moment.
That's just Image Assist.
That's just Image Assist.
Okay.
Once you've made that drive, you can go to, and I'll move back a folder or two here. So we're in our Image Assist folder. You can see that we have a folder in here called Images. You'll find our Windows 7 and our Windows 10 images in there. the drivers that I was talking about earlier. I'll show you the format here. Remember that I have this Dell Driver Packs local folder that I mentioned earlier, right? This is where all of your Dell driver packs go. You can see I have one in here called Windows 7 Optiplex D4. I know that that's the 7010 because that's I've been dealing with these things for a while, but the way that you will know that that's the right one is that under drivers here, I have an Excel spreadsheet called Dell Driver Identification. When we open this up, excuse me. Wonder if other people are opening this up too. 30 minutes.
You're good.
Okay. There we go. So, we have two tabs in here. There's Windows 7 and Windows 10. The columns here are family, so this is the E8 latitudes, the E5 latitudes, and the models that are part of that family are listed here. So, for example, the E4 latitudes covers all of the 30 series laptops, right? The 6430, the E6530, all of those are in this group. And so what you do is you find the laptop or find the model that you're trying to get the drivers for, right? Say I had an Optiplex 3030. That's in the D6 Optiplex group, and you can see under driver file that I need the Windows 7 Optiplex D6. So if I go back to my Windows 7 folder, there's one called Windows 7 Optiplex D6. I didn't include the A16 at the end because that's the revision number. Those could change. Obviously, if there's a new one out today, that may change to A18 or A20. But this first part, the prefix here, Win 7 Optiplex D6, according to this chart, is the one that I would need for a 3030. Windows 10, oops, I'm in the right one there. Windows 10, you can see, does not go back as far. So on the Optiplex, so your desktops, it only goes back to the 10 series. And as I mentioned before, it only goes back to the 50s for the latitudes. Like I said, you can apply Windows 10 without drivers, and it's pretty good about picking it up. You may have to massage a couple of the drivers to get them to work, but you could apply Windows 10 on older machines if you need to. That's pretty much it for the driver files. Remember, once you found the driver files you need, either in your Windows 7 or Windows 10 folder, you simply take that file, you copy it, you go to your Dell drive under your Dell Driver Packs local folder, and you paste the drivers in there. And then from there, when you're booting, like I said earlier when we were applying an image, they just have to exist in here. Your Dell Image Assist utility will know which model your computer is, and it'll apply the correct drivers for it. Any questions on that before we move on to image capture?
Go back one screen and
Sure.
just leave it up for a second.
Go back to
Just
here.
that right there.
Yep.
Yep.
This is the utility. Okay. Yeah, this is what's on the screen right now is my USB drive.
And except for the WIM and the stuff inside the driver packs local, that's what appears when you run the Rufus tool.
Okay.
Yep.
It creates
Rufus
all the
builds
rest of it.
everything but this WIM file, which you have to copy over, and as John said, the stuff that's in the driver packs local. Everything else here is applied to the tool when you build it using Rufus.
Yep.
Okay, so I didn't see any other questions there, so I'm going to keep moving. So we're going to go to, and I will give you your laptop back. Thank you.
Yep.
I appreciate that. I even thought about bringing an extra machine. I was like, nah, I got all this stuff. I don't need this. All right. Plug this guy back in here. Okay, so we're back on my machine here. Now, so setting up a Windows machine is a little bit different than the Mac. You still are basically doing the same thing, right? You're installing all the software that you want on the machine. You're making it look and work how you want it to look and work. There are a few additional caveats to that that we'll kind of go over here. What I would do first, if you're if you want to build one from scratch and have like a pretty good place to start, honestly, like I said before, when Kathleen asked about what happens when you don't have the right drivers, is I would actually just take our base image, apply it to a machine without drivers, and you can do that multiple ways. You could rename the driver folder, you could just make sure that the drivers for your particular model aren't in there. But if you apply the image that we have up there without drivers, you actually have a pretty good starting point to build your own images from, because it's going to have all of our software that you guys are going to want anyway, right? Office 2016, it's going to have Adobe Reader, it's going to have the other browsers, it's going to have our Java settings, it's going to have like all that stuff set up. Oh, we're at the question.
Oh, no, he's just saying, Kathleen wants to know if we can change the view on the screen to be less slanted and more clear. So that's why I pointed at you. No?
Yeah, we can't, unfortunately. I'll let you deal with that. It's because of how we have this set up. We're gonna have to find a better way to do it, but this works for now. Okay, so capturing the image piece. So if you start by applying this image to the machine, you're actually at a really good place to kind of take everything back out of here and keep going with it. And really all you would need to do from this point is install additional software that you want on the machine and do any other like customizations to wallpaper or stuff like that. I recommend honestly, if you're going to try to lock down the way certain kids have things on their machine or apply certain wallpaper, it's easier to do that through group policy, because if you ever change your mind later, you don't have to go back and rebuild your image. Call us up and say, man, I really just, I want all my kids to see this wallpaper no matter what, or I don't want them to be able to change the wallpaper or any of that. Group policy is a better place to manage that, because we can make those changes, we can apply them, and the whole school gets them. And that's all there is to it. If you ever change your mind, you can come back and say, don't do that often, because we'll get tired of listening to that and we won't help you. But no, half kidding. But seriously, like a lot of that UI customization is better done on the post. In your image, you really just want to get all of the software and everything set up how you want it to. Those of you that have captured images in the past, you know that there were a number of other things that you had to do. You had to delete old user accounts and stuff. You had to enable the local administrator account. There's a lot of nitty gritty that you kind of had to go through before you got to that spot. But if you apply our image, you really don't have to do any of that anymore. Default profile admin. Okay, good. That's all that's there. So what we're going to do here is we've got our machines set up how we want it, right? We've installed all of our software. We put some wallpaper on here. If you make all of these changes with your administrator account, that's the best place for it, because I'll show you during the capture process here where we tell it, hey, I want my administrator account to be what all of the default accounts look like when people log into this computer. So what I would do is, and we have, oh shoot, I don't have network access here. So under that same path, under Image Assist on the network, on the DPS NAS 01, there's another folder in there called Capture, okay? And Capture actually has this sitting inside of it. Again, I don't have network access on this computer because I don't have any drivers. You can see that there's no devices here. But under that Capture folder, you have what's called Installer, and then these two Image Assist files for 36 and 64. In order to install Image Assist on this machine for a capture, you just need these three files. You can see I just threw them in a folder called Capture on my drive. This isn't default here. When you build an Image Assist drive, it actually is that USB tool that we were looking at before. This folder is so you can actually install Image Assist on this machine, okay? So Image Assist, what you would do is you would hit this installer. We aren't going to actually install it personally because we have this already installed here, but it'll pop this thing open. It'll ask, hey, is there, accept the defaults is really what I'm trying to say. You'll just kind of click next through this installer, and it'll install Image Assist on the machine. The reason you need both the 32 and the 64-bit files is because it'll detect which you have for which your system is, and it'll apply the correct ones. So this is a 64-bit machine, so we have the 64-bit Image Assist installed. It's actually going to put this handy little icon on the desktop here. Don't worry, this doesn't ruin your image. Image Assist knows what folders it's created what icons it's created, and what registry entries it made, and when it captures your image, it excludes all of that. So none of what Image Assist is doing here will be in your final image. So we're going to run the Image Assist utility. Kind of shows you these fancy things here. You can do the guide me, but I'm going to actually take you through the direct tools here and show you kind of what to do with it. So you have your USB drive creator. The steps that I showed you with Rufus, they're the best way to just quickly create your own USB drives, but you can actually, in the Image Assist utility, install this or create your own drives in here. It does the exact same thing that Rufus does. The reason I show you guys to do it with Rufus is because you kind of have to have Image Assist installed to do it this way. And the big caveat, and this is important to note before you capture your images, is that you can only install Image Assist on a non-domained computer, okay? And you do not want to join the domain with your computer before you get it ready for capture, okay? You really don't want to put it on the network or do anything to it. You don't want to install any drivers to it. There's a quick list in our imaging guide, and I won't go through all of it, but there's a quick checklist of here's the things you don't want to do to your image before you prepare it. And that's the biggest one. Do not join it to the domain. If you accidentally do, start over. Like, it's not worth fighting through the errors and other things that you could probably face after joining it. And as I said, the reason we don't show you this is because you can't do it on a domain machine. So we're going to go to the next one here. So this is the unattend XML creator. This is part of the guide me process, so it's one of the steps that you can go through. What an unattend XML is it's a set of instructions held in an XML file that Windows uses when it does that setup at the very beginning, where it's going through and it's installing drivers and all that stuff. It's called the OOBE. It stands for out of box experience. It's if you took a computer out of the box and you turned it on, it goes through steps setting stuff up for your hardware. And what this does, the XML creator, is it kind of sets some of those parameters for you, okay? We're not going to restore any settings here. So this thing kind of automates creating that XML file for you. Normally, you would have to create it yourself. It's kind of a pain, and there's a lot of, I can show you the XML when it's done, there's a lot of little things to it, but truthfully, if you just walk through this wizard, like, it's the easiest thing to do. So registered owner and organization doesn't really matter. You could put your name and whatever in here. I put DoTS in Denver Public Schools. That's what you'll see in all of your images. But you guys could put your school name in there or however you want to label that. You can skip the product key because remember ours automatically activate with our KMS server, so you don't put anything in there. It'll default to English here. If you really wanted to, you could prompt to have them select their language. If maybe you had, if you were in a school where you have a high population of, say, ELA teachers or something that use Spanish on their machine, you could prompt them to, in the setup process, if you know it's going to a Spanish teacher, set it up for Spanish. I would probably just leave it in English and let them do it later, but it's an option in here. Select the architecture for the target computers. You can see it's already selected x64. If you're building a 32-bit, obviously it'll automatically select this. This does have to match the image, so if you accidentally select the wrong one, it's not going to work, but it should find it for you automatically. It'll choose automatically the time zone that your computer is set to, so it found Mountain Time here. So this piece, we've had success with this. This is the workgroup or domain joining. You can actually have your computers automatically join the domain when they set up. There are a few caveats to this. The reason we don't put it in our base image should be pretty obvious. Obviously, we're not going to put our credentials in there. And additionally, most of the machines out in the field, we don't necessarily want joining in any one way or the other, so we don't set it to join this. But if you had a need to build a specific image that you wanted to auto join, and you had, say, a lab of machines that were going to be connected to the network when they were set up, you could actually go in here, set your domain, put in your username and password. You can tell it what OU you want it to put it in. You don't have to do that for ours because obviously in the next part here where you name it, you could actually name it yours and then it'll auto move. So I could put that stuff in here. I could create a custom name. The thing that sucks is they don't let you take the service tag out of here. So you would actually be naming it, like if your school was 255, whoops, that's not 255 dash, you're stuck with the service tag. If you don't care, go for it. Set it to join the domain, set it to a custom name, have it auto join, and you may save yourself quite a bit of time. We don't have it in our image, but it's there if you want to test it out. I'm going to leave it to auto generate, and oops, I am going to leave it to work group. We're not going to have it join. So the only other thing that I would say that you may want to consider setting is if you're building your own image and you wanted to change that first password you log in with, you could change the password here, but truthfully, the only thing that I would probably check is this checkbox down here that says copy administrator profile to the default user profile, okay? Don't do either of these, creating local admin account and password. I guess you could, STRs, I take that back. You could set that if you want to be prompted at the beginning to create your own local admin account. That's
So if we have a backdoor on all of our computers.
right, like if you have,
That's what we wanna check
you'll
right
want to
here?
check that.
Okay.
If you're currently building local admin accounts, so you have a backdoor, you will want to check that because that'll put that back into the beginning of it. We took it out because we wanted the beginning process as automated as possible. But you could put that back in if you had a need to do that. But yeah, so leave enable local system admin on and don't disable system restore. System restore is obviously useful, and if you take this out, if you uncheck that, it'll probably break your image. So leave that alone. That's why there's all this red text here. Don't play with it. But this copy administrator profile to the default user profile, this is the piece I was talking about earlier. Changes that you make to the admin profile, right? Wallpaper, if you change, if you put a bunch of icons on the desktop, right, you've got like shortcuts and stuff to different applications, and you want those icons to show up on every user that logs in, check this box, and if you made those changes in your admin profile, everybody's going to have those changes. That's pretty much it. The XML basically builds itself. I'm going to hit the build unattend here, and it's done. So it's built an XML file based on the settings that I chose there. And that's all the automated stuff in the out-of-box experience when it first sets up, okay? I'm not gonna do questions yet because we'll just kind of run through the rest of this and we'll ask questions on all of it. So the next step down here in the bottom is the validation checker. This is something that we didn't have before that's really, really awesome. In the past, many of you that have made images before went through, did all this stuff, went through, captured your image, you know, you had sys-prepped or whatever you had to do. You didn't have this ability, and sometimes your images just didn't work and you never really knew why. Well, this validation checker is pretty awesome because it'll tell you if your image is going to work or not. I happen to know that mine are all going to pass here because I just set this up. And actually, out of the box, if you apply our image, everything will pass here except the unattend XML check. And that tells you, hey, go back and make an unattend file. Because everything here, I mean, I know that there's nothing bad in the registry. I know that I haven't installed any drivers. I know I don't have it joined to the domain. There's no additional weird policies on there. This is all going to pass. But in the past, when those of you that built your own images had stuff fail, if you would have ran through this and had that available to you, it would have failed and it would have told you what to do. So mine all passed there. And it's kind of hard to show you this piece because they do all pass, but what happens is rather than just bouncing back here when they pass, you'll actually it'll pause at that screen, you'll see a fail in a certain area, it'll be in red, and at the bottom it gives you an explanation, this is what failed and why. Usually the biggest one that you'll see is drivers. Like if you accidentally plugged it into the internet and it started, or into your Ethernet and it went to the internet and started getting updates, maybe it found the driver card or the video card driver and it installed it. Video card driver can't be installed for this. So drivers are the most common, but the best part is they tell you, hey, this is the driver that's keeping me from capturing this image for you. You need to remove it. And it tells you what the driver is. You can go into Device Manager and remove it. If it finds certain software that it knows it can't capture an image with, it tells you you can't have this software on there, the image won't capture, go uninstall it. So it's really good about telling you these are the things that are going to break your image and you need to remove them and fix them, and it tells you exactly how to do it. So that's the validation checker. And then the last step is to capture the image. If you do restore architect, there's the, I thought they had the capture at the bottom of this. Why isn't it on there? All right, so anyway, those are the individual utilities. I'm gonna go through the guide me because this actually is probably the best way to just do it. So in the guide me, and that's at the very first screen here, just the bit, and when you first install it, you can see it's actually flashing at you, just like the image assist utility USB. It's like, this is where you wanna go. I showed you these because those are the individual pieces and I don't wanna walk through them that way. So I'm gonna click guide me. We don't need to, I mean, we can run the unattend XML creator from here. If you say next, it's going to say, do you want to create a USB drive? Nope, we don't need to create a USB drive. We already have one. We can click next. So these are the selections that we have, and it's going to give you this before you run through all of it. Run the unattend XML creator? Sure, let's do that. Run validation. You can see that that box is grayed out. It does not give you the option. It's going to make you run validation. The one thing that you want to check at the very end here is the run auto capture. Why is it not?
It says a bootable USB or ISO is required, so you don't have an extra drive.
Am I not plugged in? I thought it was here. Run a bootable USB or an ISO will be required to capture the image. That's weird. Why doesn't it have? Huh. I apologize. Normally it lets me check that there, and I'm not sure why it's not.
No, it's drivers for USB, right?
A bootable USB drive or an ISO will be required to capture your image. Ugh. Does it really make you do that? That's a shame. Darn it. Well, I guess I don't really care about that drive. It just takes a long time to make it. Crud. Well, I won't be able to walk through that piece of it. Okay, so unfortunately, what I'm going to have to do is I'm just going to have to let you guys pretend that I was able to run this auto capture. Apparently, in this version, this is not the way it used to be. If it detected that you had a bootable USB drive in there, that was enough for it. And I do have it in there, right? And it's detected it. Yeah, it's in there. That's a shame. So apparently, in this piece of it, it wants you to create. So what I would say is just put any old blank USB drive in there that you don't care about. Apparently, I'll have to see if that's a permanent piece in this. Huh. I guess it really is. Bootable will require, see, use this tool to create a bootable DVD restore architect. So I use this tool with switch. Yeah, I don't want to do that right now. Huh. Interesting. So I guess it forces you now to create that USB drive. That's interesting. I have not done this version yet. 6302. I'll have to remember that. I'll have to change the documentation for it too. Okay, so let's kind of take this from the top again. If you go through the guide me, you can leave the unattend creator in there. You will want to have it create the USB drive, which means you'll need some sort of USB drive plugged in there. If you already have one, I mean, you could have it just remake it. But truthfully, I would just use any old 1 or 2 gigabyte drive. It doesn't really matter what it is. Because what it does at this point, when you check the run auto capture feature down here, what the auto capture actually does is it syspreps your machine. And sysprep is a utility that, when we were talking about that out-of-box experience before, it actually takes Windows and it prepares it down to a spot where you can actually have it set up for that out-of-box experience. So it'll take and it'll say, okay, well, you have these devices on the machine. We're going to uninstall all of the last devices for your processor and your motherboard, and it truly makes it completely agnostic to any machine that you're going to apply it to. So the sysprep will take it down to that base level where you can actually get back to that out-of-box experience. I guess they're making you create a bootable USB drive. If you go through those steps and you say run selection, what it will do, yeah, it sucks. I really wanted it to do that piece. Let's see what it does here. I want to see what the steps are. Yes, we'll restore the settings we have. Build unattend. It's going to run validation. This is pretty quick too. I really want to just get to that last step to where they can see the sysprep checkbox. Again, sorry that they make you do it this way now, but it is all in the auto, or in the documentation. Let's walk past this. Okay, so you can see that this last step is where SysPrep is actually going through and doing the, it says it on the screen there, it's doing the cleanup phase for all of the drivers. So it's taking all of the last bits of the drivers out, it's taking all of the plugins and everything out. It's getting this machine prepped down to the place where the image is ready to capture. Sorry, this takes a little bit of time. We can do you want to open it up to questions while SysPrep is running here? You guys have any questions so far?
So you said the computer that we're taking an image from can't be domained. Can I run sysprep before I go into image assist so that it takes it off the domain and then go through and run it?
No, well, so when you're building an image, like if you're trying to build, your custom image or whatever, like I said, my recommendation would be to take our image, apply it to a machine, and then do your customizations and then run through this process. If you have a machine that's already been domained and it's already kind of set up how you want it, I would not use that as your test case for your image.
Okay.
The worst part about imaging is that you really should, to get a good clean capture, you really should build it from scratch. Now you could try, there's no reason you can't try it. You could always take your machine, unjoin it from the domain, you know, run the utility, go through and do driver check and all that stuff. It's probably going to make you uninstall a ton of drivers, but really, like, there's always going to be leftover stuff in the registry. There's always going to be, like, you really want to have as clean an image as possible, and your best chance of getting it captured and restored. And for that, I would always build it from scratch.
Okay.
You guys are lucky that you can actually just take that image that we already have and make that your from scratch. When we build images, we hand install Windows, we hand install Office, we hand install Adobe, we go through, we do all this other stuff, and it sucks. It's the worst. So you guys at least have a little bit of a head start. So I know it sucks that if you're thinking, oh man, I have this one machine that I really want, but I would not use it if it's been domained, has all the drivers. Like, I would build one from scratch.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can see that we're at the spot where it says SysPrep is completed, click OK to shut down and capture this image. It's weird that it wanted me to do the auto capture. I wonder if that's when it builds the drive, does it all to the drive, because it looks like it's going to do this capture all by itself anyway. So I'm shutting it down. It came to the point where it says shut down to capture the image. And what it's going to do is you don't actually have to have a USB drive in here for this part. The capture process for Image Assist, once you've installed it, you don't need the USB drive because it shuts the machine down. It will reboot the machine in the Image Assist environment that it's set up as like a partition on your drive, boots to it, captures the image, writes the image to your hard drive, and then you can use a utility to go and to copy that back off of your drive. I'll show you the capture piece here because I didn't actually build the drive. We go back into, I'm going to have to manually boot it here, but the machine is sysprepped. But when you walk through, you know what, I take that back, because if it wants the USB drive now, yeah, you will still have to. So to do the auto capture piece, where it goes and automates all that, you will have to, I misspoke, you will have to have a USB drive in there now. God, that's irritating. I wonder why they changed that. You didn't used to. Now you have to have a USB drive in there. So what the auto capture will look like is it'll automatically boot back to the USB drive that it created during that process. I'm obviously going to boot back to mine and show you the capture piece.
So where did it save that image to?
Well, it hasn't captured it yet. That's
When
the part
it
that
does
we're.
capture it, where does it
It
save
actually,
to?
by default, it just saves it to your hard drive.
On the computer that you took the
Yeah.
image from?
Yep.
Okay.
So the capture. So if you plug the drive in there, you let it build your USB drive, and you did the whole auto capture process. So what it'll do is it'll reboot your computer, automatically boot from that USB tool, boot into Image Assist, go into the capture piece that we're about to go through here, and start the capture. And by default, it saves that captured WIM file directly to the hard drive on the computer it's capturing from. Once it's done with that process, and we're not going to go through a full capture here because it takes 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, but when it gets to the very end, it says capture complete, everything's cool here. Do you want to copy this off of the computer somewhere? And so it gives you the option at that point. Hey, if you had the hard or the USB drive that you built, if that thing was big enough, you could at that point copy it to the USB drive. If you had an external drive where you save all your images or something, you could plug that in there. You can even, if you're plugged into the network, you can actually, if you had like a network location, I don't know if you guys, if you have servers in your school or something that you save stuff on, you could remote into, or you could connect to a network drive and actually copy the image that way. So it gives you a bunch of options at the end. Where do you want to capture this to? So I'm going to, when this loads here, I'm actually going to take you into what that capture utility looks like. The process I'm going to show you is if you sysprepped like I did and you didn't do the auto capture, how you would just capture it up to your USB tool in one shot. You wouldn't have to worry about the extra copy at the end. The auto capture is nice because you can just, you hit the button, it does all that stuff, it goes down, it captures it. At the end, it's like, where do you want this thing? You copy it to your drive, you're done. This, it's a little bit of an extra step because you have to boot up, you have to F12 again, and you have to choose where you're going to put the WIM that you're doing. But I'll take you through those steps anyway, because I feel like most people are going to want to just copy it right to their drive, especially if they already have because you guys are going to have these tools anyway, right? I mean, you're probably going to go build a USB drive, and you're going to be applying images mostly. But every once in a while, if you want to capture, you're not going to want to remake the drive. You already have stuff on it. Maybe you've copied up other utilities to it. You're not going to want to rebuild that drive anytime you capture an image. So then you wouldn't do the auto capture, and that's what we're going to walk through here. So we've sysprepped our machine. It's ready for capture. So we're just booting back to our drive here, and we're going down to capture. So it takes a moment to launch it here. And it's going to kind of go through some of the same steps that we saw with restore, where it's going to say, okay, what drives are in this machine? It's going to go and try to find drive 0. It's going to recognize that there's, a drive that it can capture something through. So you can see the first step there, detecting drives, please wait. Yeah. It does take some time, unfortunately.
I have another question.
Sure.
Okay. Is there a way, is there like a server mode for this where I can send the image out to like my whole lab at once?
There is not yet. So like the Mac side where we have a Deploy Studio server, over the summer we did some work when we were building our Windows 10 image on an MDT server. It's the Microsoft Deployment Tools or whatever. It's very similar in a way, at least from that standpoint where you could be deploying from a server. You would PXE boot your computer, which is kind of similar to what the Mac does where it looks for a netboot set. You have a setting turned on in your BIOS. It looks for a PXE server out on the network somewhere. It says, hey, I found one. It connects you to it. You get like a utility where you go in, you select your image and all that stuff. MDT is a little more powerful, also a little more complex and kind of hard to use, which is part of why we weren't able to do it over the summer. But what we would like to eventually do is that you would go in, you would choose your operating system, and you would go through and there'd be like a base set of packages. And you'd be like, okay, we're obviously going to install all the time. We're going to have Microsoft Office, we're going to have Adobe, Firefox, Chrome, like all the standard set. But then there would be additional packages. You'd be like, well, this is, a setting where I have the Adobe Creative Suite or whatever, or I'm in a school, so clearly I need, the Promethean software on there and the driver and all that other stuff for it, or I have these, you get the picture. So we would have additional packages built, and you would select the packages you want, and then you would deploy it, and like Deploy Studio Server, it would push that all down. The tricky part is that the capture process is not that, it's not quite as clean, but the good news is you really wouldn't have to capture your own images anymore. You would just say, man, I really wish my image had this. You'd tell us, we'd build a deployment package for that piece of software, and then the next time you went in to deploy images, you would just add that software to it. So it would kind of take the strain off of you guys having to build custom images, because we would have a one-stop shop for all of the software that you would want on there. It's a lot to set up, but it's something we really badly want to do. So I would say maybe look for it next year. It's actually on my list of goals, is to get something like that set up for it. We all have to do goals in the central office. I don't know, do you guys have to do goals too in the schools? Okay. We have goals that we have to do, and on my list of goals for this year is to find some sort of central deployment solution for our Windows machines. I'm looking at MDT. Obviously, Drew wants us to use Landesk. Landesk has a piece in there where you can do images, but it still has the same setback of you have to have custom images built for it. So it's, I don't know, there are a few options out there. We'll kind of see where it goes, but so.
But as of right now, just wanted.
Right. As of right now, back to your original question, no, right now this is for, you make, and you can make lots of these drives, but you still have to do individual machines with the drives.
And you
Well, that
can still
really is
keep
taking a long
using
time.
your
Oh.
old method.
Well, you can't forever though. So like I mentioned before though, do know that all of the new machines that come into the district, like starting this school year, all of your 70 series and newer laptops, I don't know when the desktops start. I think they're coming that way actually now. Those machines will not take the old image anymore. And it's because they're getting rid of legacy booting the hard drive, which was the thing that forced our hand into finding another solution for this moving forward. So all your stuff in your school right now, if you've got an image you like, you can go through that process. If you want to create custom images, I recommend doing it this way. The old way of capturing your images is a lot more complex. There's a lot more dirty work that you have to do beforehand to make sure your image is ready. If you have interest in that, I can help walk you through it. There's some stuff to it. I'd be willing to do that on a one-to-one basis, but honestly, I would recommend this way because it's fast and easy. It really is.
She has a method for mass deployment.
What's that?
She has a method for mass deployment from Tony.
How are you doing mass deployment?
Clonezilla.
Oh,
So I
okay.
could do the same thing. I could go, even with the new stuff coming in, go in here, make my image from Image Assist.
Yep, and then you could
Save it
use
into
Clonezilla to,
Clonezilla.
yep.
Send it out how
Yep.
I have been.
If
So.
you're, and Clonezilla is that's also on our list. I don't think that we're gonna use that as an enterprise solution.
Yeah.
But it is, I have seen people.
It makes sense for school to school. I know how to run it. It
Right.
works great. But for you guys trying to set things up, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe in emergency situations when you need to, when a school needs an entire lab image by tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Coming in with, 20 drives. That's probably what we'll do. We've done it before.
I've never seen it take this long for this
I've
piece.
never seen it take that long either.
It's weird. Sorry, those of you out there. I hope that you have stuff to do, like playing a game or on your phone eating. It is about that time, right? 6 o'clock. Yeah, we could do that. We could take attendance. I don't know, I guess we could just see who all's in chat, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting how the watching now number keeps fluctuating.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was at high at 25, went down at 20 that I noticed. Now it's back to 21.
Lost a few. Well, Brian walked out. He was like, yeah, that's all I wanted to know later. Huh.
could take attendance for the people here. Can they do it online too?
I do see this thing flashing. I wonder if it's a network thing.
Should be.
It should not, you're right. But it said it detected B and D, I don't know. Well, if it doesn't go, we may just have to pretend.
tinyurl.strpc-mac. For those of you who are in the room.
I'm watching your animation here, it's great. Oh, we'll give this another moment here, and if it doesn't go, we'll just pretend. Oh,
Yay,
detecting
pretending.
complete. Ah, look at that.
Did it work?
Just the thread of it, I guess, right? Okay.
Switch
Okay.
back?
What's that?
Switch back.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll switch back so we can finish this up, and we'll let them. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. So we're going through the manual capture process for this. Those of you who got the URL, go ahead and still do your check-in, but also pay attention because this part's important. So we've sysprepped our machine. Remember that once you've sysprepped down, you do not want to boot the machine back up because it's going to go straight to the, boot the machine back up without booting here. Do not boot back into Windows because you ruin your sysprep. And if you sysprep a machine too many times, your image will not take anymore. It won't be able to capture it. There's something that Windows does where when it prepares those files down multiple times, it eventually, you can, like 1 sysprep is fine, 2 syspreps is usually fine, 3 syspreps is where you're starting to get into the danger zone, 4, and I guarantee your image will not work. So try to make sure you boot into this without getting back into Windows. Anyway, so we're in our image assist. We clicked on capture on that first screen. You can see that it detected these 2 partitions on our drive. There's a UEFI system drive and a Windows drive. So these are the 2, it's interesting they call those drives. They should be partitions. But so we have the options when we're done with our capture to stay in the utility, to reboot the computer, which I would almost never choose. The reason for that is if something goes wrong here, rebooting the computer would boot you back into Windows and you ruin your sysprep. So I would never choose reboot. Shutdown though, I guess if you don't really care, if you're like, yeah, it'll work, it's cool, and you believe it, go for shutdown. I would leave it at stay because it's nice to see whether or not this actually captured properly. So you get to choose your save path. By default, it's saving it to, and you can see that it named your Windows drive letter B. I don't know why it chooses these drive letters. Doesn't even look like you can change them, but named it B. The save path, by default, is just going to save it to the root of your B drive, your C drive, your Windows drive. You can change this, of course. If you have a drive big enough, you can see that I have, here's my USB drive, and I can say, well, I just want to save this. Well, I'm out of space. Okay, it's telling me I don't have the space. That's fine. But if I wanted to save it directly to my USB drive and I had the space for it, I could do that here. I would just leave it at the B drive. It doesn't let me type it back in there. That's fine. It's fine to save it down to that drive. Like I said, it doesn't affect your image. And at the very end of this, when you click stay, and I'm not going to go through this because the capture process does take a while as well. But once I click capture, it goes through, it captures all the stuff that it needs to. It writes it all to the WIM file on the path that you told it to. And then when it's done, it'll tell you whether it was successful or it failed. Hopefully it's successful. And when it's done, you get another option in here. And I don't have a screenshot of this or anything, but you get another option that I was mentioning earlier. Do you want to save this to somewhere else? You don't have to. You could just, boot your computer from there if it was successful. Grab your WIM, copy it to somewhere else once you've booted back into Windows. It's totally up to you at that point. But if you do have a drive in there that's big enough, you could save it out of there, or like I said, change the save path. But you can see, again, there's really not much to do here. The defaults are usually pretty good. There's nothing, minus, again, naming it, if you want to call this, the image, you put your school's name in there, or the year, or both. Minus naming it, there's really not much here that you need to do. You hit the capture button, and it captures your image. So let's start with kind of questions on the capture process, and then let's just kind of go with some overall questions for Windows and even Mac, honestly, at this point. And then I'm done. Hopefully I got you out here a little early. Maybe. if you guys are done, just book, but. um,
It seems pretty straightforward to me.
It really is. I mean, it's a lot easier than it used to be.
Definitely.
There were a lot of, anybody that went through it before, I don't know who all is out there, but anybody that went through it before can tell you, like, there was all this other stuff that was really irritating, and if you did this wrong, or set this up wrong, or accidentally applied certain updates, like, there was a ton of stuff. Now, like, apply whatever updates you want, honestly. If you decide to, you can install the wired network driver for it and get it online, so you can do Windows updates and stuff. You actually, I think the network drivers are the only ones you don't have to uninstall. It's okay with those. Like, Windows is just kind of like, it's a network driver. I have lots of those. I don't really care. So you could, if you wanted to do more updates and get it on, like if the software you're looking for is on the internet, you could install just the network driver for your model, go to the Dell website and grab it, install the network driver, go get your stuff off the internet and whatever, and then run the utility. If it wants your network driver uninstalled, it'll tell you, just go uninstall it afterwards. But yeah, I mean, it's so much easier than it used to be. Again, all of this is documented. If you have any questions, half of this documentation is sitting right in the folder for Image Assist. But honestly, like, all this stuff is out there. Dell, I actually need to put the Dell documentation up there as well. It's way more detailed than the documentation. We kind of have the step-by-step, here's what you need to do to capture and all that stuff. But the Dell documentation is like 20 pages of like, here's what every single checkbox and drop-down box means, and here's when you wouldn't use it. So I should put that up there. It's pretty useful if you're.
I think that would be helpful.
Okay, I will toss that up there. I'll put it where all the other little bits are that you might need, and I'll put it on the SDR wiki because I know a lot of people still look there. So
Cool.
I don't see any other questions out there. So yeah, this is us signing off. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a good rest of your day. See you guys later. Thank you for coming. You're the only two that did, but.
How do I take attendance?
Did you take attendance? Oh, yeah, if you want to prove it, so I don't have to track a separate
Was it
piece of
online?
paper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, otherwise I have to do one piece of
Yeah,
paper
man.
for you.
No,
and then go
I'm
in.
happy to do it. Where was it?
It's tinyurl.com /strpc.
It's weird that for the auto capture they don't detect your drive. I wonder if something's wrong with mine, that they didn't detect it or something.